Good morning, third graders. Happy Monday, and this is our last math lesson of the school year. So this is lesson 18.2. We're going to be talking about congruent figures. So our objectives for today include identify a slide, flip, and turn, and you might recognize those words from one of our math games that we've been playing a couple of times this year. Slide, flip, and turn shapes to make congruent figures. Identify congruent figures. And our vocabulary words include slide, flip, turn, rotate, and congruent. Okay, so here is our first learn section. It says plane figures can slide, flip, and turn. Like we've said a couple of times now, a plane figure is two-dimensional. It is a flat shape. You can move figures in different ways. Imagine pushing this figure from here to there. You slide it along. The figure of the dog has been slid along from left to right. To slide a figure is to move it along in any direction. Okay, the figure doesn't change at all. It's just changing positions. So you can see the dog can slide in any direction, and that is called a slide. When I hold the letter D in front of a mirror, the image in the mirror is like the back side of the letter D. Okay, so you can see before a flip and after a flip. Okay, same with here. After a flip and before a flip. It's just flipping over different lines. The letter D has been flipped over a line. To flip a figure is to turn it front to back over a line. Okay. The figure of the sheep has been turned a half turn. A turn, to turn a figure is to rotate it about a point. Okay, so we've had slide, we've had flip, and now we're turning. Okay. Flips, slides, and turns are movements that change the position of figures, but the shape and size of the figure remain unchanged. So they're exactly the same figure, they're just changing position. Two figures that have the same shape and size are congruent, even if they're in different positions. If they have the same shape and size, they are the same, they are congruent. All right, let's do a little bit of practice here. Trace one of the two figures, cut it out and place it on top of the other figure. Decide which sets of shapes have been slid along in any direction and are congruent. So we can see here, we obviously can't trace and cut, but we can see in set A, it's exactly the same size and shape. It has just slid up. So we know that this is showing congruent figures in number one. Number two, we see the green rectangles. Again, they're exactly the same size and shape, they're just in different positions. It looks like it has been slid diagonally. So these are congruent figures. Now for number three, I see that the two triangles have changed positions, but they don't look like the same size or the same shape. So those are not congruent. Okay, so numbers 4 through 6, they decide which sets of shapes are flipped and congruent. So remember, this is flipping over a line. Set A, we see the same size and shape arrow. It's flipping over a line. Those two are congruent. Number 5, you can see a flip is happening over a line, but they are not the same size. They may be the same shape, but they're not the same size, so those are not congruent. And then set C, it's a little bit tricky to see because the page was folded a little bit, but looking in the book, you can tell that this has been flipped. They're the same size and shape. They are both congruent. Okay. And finally, for number 7, we're trying to decide which sets of shapes have been turned about a point and are congruent. So are they the same size and shape? We can see for set A, if we try to turn that, we would be turning this way and we would eventually line up with the same size and shape triangle. Those are congruent. Same with 8 and same with 9. I was a little bit tricked. We're not going to be rotating it or turning it. In this case, it's flipped. So yes, they're congruent, but they're not turned. Okay, so that one was a little bit tricky. Identify pairs of congruent figures. Congruent figures can have the same shape and size. How can you be sure these figures are congruent? Put one on top of the other to see if they fit exactly. So even though these are different colors, they're the same size and shape, so they are congruent figures. Can two figures appear in different positions and be congruent? Yes, if they are the same shape and size. You could show it by placing one figure on top of the other figure. So this table here is showing us why these figures are not congruent. So we have two triangles here, but they're not congruent because they're not the same size. They're the same shape, but not the same size. Here we have two very different shapes. They're not the same shape and they're not the same size, so they're not congruent. Okay, and finally, in the last column, they're not the same shape, so they're not congruent. This is the last page that we'll do together, and then you have 2 Google Slides to do of your own for your Let's Practice activity, and you'll hand it in when you're done. So decide whether the shapes are congruent. Choose yes or no. I'm just going to put Y for yes, N for no. These 2 triangles, it looks like they have been slid to change position, same size and shape. Yes, they are congruent. These squares, they're the same shape but not the same size, so they are not congruent. Okay. It looks like we have a pentagon here. It has 5 sides. It looks like it's been rotated a little, but they're the same size and shape. Yes, they're congruent. And taking a look at these trapezoids, same thing, same size and same shape. They're just in a different position. Yes, they are congruent. Okay. We're not going to do 14 through 16 because we're not able to draw right now, but you have some practice problems to do on the Google slide that's attached to this lesson. So you can go back and look at this lesson if you need some help. You can reach out to me if there's something that you don't understand, but you will complete those 2 Google Slides and then hand it in when you're done. And this is your last math lesson of the year, so congratulations.